Well, Catherine McGregor has a hard-won reputation for understanding turbulent times such as these. She's a graduate of the Royal Military College Duntroon with honours. She also attended the Changing Character of War program at Oxford University, gaining postgraduate qualifications in war studies. She has served in a number of command appointments, promoted to the rank of captain. She resigned in the 80s, working in various law firms. She has been a political speechwriter for the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. But she returned to the Army in 2001 and completed multiple tours of East Timor, including command of the training team embedded with their army. She was then appointed to Army headquarters. She was a speechwriter to the head of the Army between 2001 and 2014. On Australia Day in 2012, the then Lieutenant Colonel McGregor was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in the Military Division for, quote, exceptional service to the Australian Army as the Director of the Land Warfare Studies Centre. I offer all that by way of saying that her scholarship and service make her immensely credentialed. She wrote almost 2 years ago about the warnings of two former Air Force chiefs that, quote, Australia must urgently review its air and maritime strike capabilities in order to meet the threat posed by a rising China and a possible retreat by America from our region. Well, here now is the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott in Taiwan, as Taiwan is working with partners to defend itself from the very campaign that Catherine McGregor wrote about 2 years ago. She joins me now. Catherine, thank you for your time. How significant is the visit by Tony Abbott?
It's very significant, Alan, and the timing, of course, is propitious given the coercion that has been taking place with these incursions by the People's Liberation Army Air Force into the aerial defence zone over Taiwan. He's held in high esteem by their foreign minister, as you've correctly cited, and also make a point that he was the first foreign leader to call Narendra Modi upon his election. He called him from a stairwell at Cranbourne Racetrack that night. He has always been acutely aware of balancing China. Mm. And if the
Taiwanese president, Catherine, sorry, before we do, could I just ask you this critical point? The Taiwanese president has written in her essay in Foreign Affairs that, quote, in today's global contest of values, authoritarianism has the upper hand over democracy. Catherine, if that's the case, and you've got the scholarship on this, what kind of future do we face?
Well, I actually, 4 years ago, predicted that China would invade Taiwan in 2017, because I always believed that their movement to militarise the atolls in the Spratlys and elsewhere was merely buying strategic space to do the cross-straits operation. That has been their historic objective. Now, we've been at war with them for a long time, let's be frank about it, in that they have been engaged in grey zone warfare against Australia for some significant time. Constant cyber incursions, grey zone warfare, information warfare directed at us, and trade coercion. So what do we do about it? Alan, time is running away faster than we can prepare, frankly, and I know you've alluded to Jim Molan's excellent work in this space. The fact is, we are configured for the wrong war. We need to urgently partner with the United States. Given the A2AD configuration of the PLA, which is anti-access area denial, where they've gone for these sea-skimming missiles to make it very difficult for American fleet units to operate inside the second island chain. We should be hosting America's B-52s from Guam here on our bare bases in the north of Australia. That's the first point. We need to shelve the purchase of Abrams tanks, which we don't need and will never deploy, and replace that procurement program urgently with buying an off-the-shelf bomber, because the Joint Strike Fighter doesn't hit hard enough or go far enough.
Yeah, just let me ask this. I mean, when China flies 56 fighter jets near Taiwan on Monday, including apparently 12 nuclear-capable bombers, are these gestures? Are these gestures, or is war on the horizon? That's the first question. And then supplementary, if we were called upon to assist America, what is our strategic defence capability?
I'll answer the first bit first. Our capacity is weak. Where we do have a strength is that we are integrated into their space and cyber warfighting systems, in that Australia is the indispensable power. Given the distribution of their ground station network through Australia, because of our massive land mass and the number of cloud-free days, it gives us redundancy so that elements of their space systems don't go offline due to cloud cover. So we're tied into getting the first picture of any nuclear missile launch from either North Korea or China. So we have an indispensable role, and the facilities at Pine Gap and elsewhere in this country are deeply, deeply important to the United States. Indeed, indispensable to their space, cyber and nuclear deterrent capabilities. In our, is war imminent? I don't believe it is. I'll tell you why. I think this is coercion. It's shaping, it's trying to give an era of inevitability. There's two reasons I don't think it is. I think they want to get the Winter Olympics out of the road as a global showcase of the supremacy of their system. I do think Xi wants to invade Taiwan and reclaim it, and he's under enormous internal pressure that he's juggling to try to foist off. And this kind of incorporation is a high wire act on his part. The one redeeming feature is there is blowback within the PLA about this, and there are fault lines appearing inside the Politburo about his conduct of policy as well. And tomorrow night I've got a China expert talking about the fact that it's not inconceivable he could be deposed internally.
It's interesting, isn't it? Look, you wrote about Air Marshal Davies in 2019, then 2 years ago, that the Australian Defence Force, quote, is poorly equipped to meet the new era of great power conflict between the US and China. And you wrote, our existing naval and air assets may not be able to defend the country's sea lines of communication, which are the primary maritime routes, of course, used by military and trade vessels. I had Jim Moeller on the program last week, who chillingly said, Alan, I doubt we could fight effectively against a peer adversary for more than a few days, and said, given the magnitude of the possible conflict we face, much of our security will be up to us. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with it. I've discussed it with Jim both on my program and offline. We've talked a lot about this stuff. He's right. Our war holdings, our stockpiles of munitions, our supply chain security on vital petrol oil and other lubricants is very, very precarious, Alan. And we've got very few platforms. We seem to think that we're going to fight wars where we've had air superiority. That's been the case since Vietnam, but it won't be the case against a peer adversary. And let's talk about it. It's nation-state conflict. The PLA can afford to lose platforms. We can't. What are we going to have? 72 Joint Strike Fighters, and we can't even crew them.
Just before you go, because our viewers, and I think Australians, are very sophisticated about this. They actually know what's going on in the world. And they just want a simple sort of answer, where are we? So if someone said to you today, China, Taiwan, America, Australia, where are we? Very briefly, you know, where are we right now?
We're on the precipice, but we can avoid going over the brink, and it's by actions like what Tony Abbott's doing, and this tripartite arrangement with the United States, the UK. We need to make the cost of going to war over Taiwan intolerable, and that's where India comes in. We've got to enhance capacity, we've got to show resolve, and we've got to put pressure on Xi internally, like escalate the trade war and make it absolutely clear that unless China democratises and gives some sanction to people inside who've been repressed in Hong Kong and inside mainland China. There are people who participated in the repression in Hong Kong last year being purged today as we speak, leading police figures and others. So they're not as stable or as daunting as they may appear. We need to stand up to them.
I agree. And Catherine, I think the point you made is very, very strong point to lay everyone's concerns to rest. We've got to make sure that the cost of them taking any kind of action is beyond what even they would contemplate. Catherine, thank you very much for your time and your insights. Marvellous stuff, isn't it? Not at all. There she is, Catherine McGregor. And don't forget that Molan, if you want to read that Molan essay, it's in the Australia Tomorrow, it's an anthology of essays, which is here. And Jim Molan, it's quite an extraordinary. I'll tell you what, puts the shiver up your spine, but he says it earthily and accurately.